You're tuned to Once Upon a Fairy Tale. Welcome to Once Upon a Fairy Tale, the podcast. It's Disney Dwayne here. We're on episode 11 right now. I just want to say thank you so much for all your support. Please continue to help like, comment, and share our episodes on social media so we get more people to hit that subscribe button. This is part 2 of the Disney Music Comprehensive Guide. Part 1 was the most popular of our podcasts so far, and that makes me really glad you're enjoying all of this information put together for you. I just want to say that everything in this comprehensive guide are things that I know about, but that's not to say that there aren't things that I don't. Let's begin with musicals on stage. Disney's musicals come in the form of stagings, starting as tryouts before moving on to Broadway, and then sometimes touring. There are also original adaptations on their cruise ships as well as in their parks. But first up, musical cast albums. Here's a list, starting with Aida. Just because we're going alphabetically, there are 2 albums, the concept album as well as the Broadway cast album. And then there's Aladdin that's currently playing at the New Amsterdam Theater on Broadway after its tryouts in Seattle at the Fifth Avenue Theater. There are 3 albums out for Beauty and the Beast, that's in English, the Australian production, as well as Broadway and the West End production. I'm not even keeping track of those in foreign languages, so that's another whole collection in itself. The Hunchback of Notre Dame cast album is the latest release in the musical cast albums lineup. There was a German one way back, but the English version is now out and available. For a detailed comparison between the German and English version, as well as the movie version and some other Hunchback trivia, check out an episode of Disney Dust, another series that I host and produce. Podcast notes can be found on the Once Upon a Fairy Tale podcast Facebook page at www.facebook.com/onceuponafairytaletime. If you didn't know already, a lot of these adaptations of the movies have additional songs, and they stand alone as their very own versions of the story. This next musical is quite unheard of. It actually was the first musical that was staged at the New Amsterdam Theater when Disney first bought over and refurbished it. King David. It was more of a concert, but nonetheless it was written by the greats Alan Menken and Tim Rice. This album is selling at $83 at the moment on Amazon.com. Let's not forget The Lion King. It's currently the longest running Disney musical on Broadway, having even moved from the New Amsterdam Theater to the Minskoff Theater. The Little Mermaid also had a run on Broadway. It had a demo album that was circulating for a bit, but it also has its own original Broadway cast album. Mary Poppins also exists as an adapted stage musical. It has 2 recordings, one the original London cast recording and another the Australian cast. The biggest difference between the Australian live cast recording and the British one would probably be the replacement of the song Temper Temper with the song Playing the Game. Although it did play on Broadway, there's no official cast recording for that. What's unique about this musical is that it takes story elements from the movie as well as from the books and makes it its own. I'm also very privileged to call lyricist Anthony Drew a friend, and I had the chance to interview him for a previous podcast. Again, the link's in the podcast notes. This next cast album is a little more unheard of. It's based off the live-action movie called Geppetto. It follows the adventures of Pinocchio's father, or maker, played by Drew Carey. Music and lyrics by Stephen Schwartz, who later then adapted this story for the stage, calling it Disney's Geppetto and Son. It's now called My Son Pinocchio, and although there isn't an official album for this version, which from what I can tell includes one extra song called Rise and Shine, you can get the licensing rights to stage this musical from MTI, which stands for Music Theatre International. Newsies is also another stage adaptation we got from a movie. The cast album includes songs from the movie as well as several new numbers, also by Alan Menken. The next cast album is a unique jukebox musical called Disney's On the Record, which features Disney songs from their live-action and animated films, as well as television series and Broadway musicals, and even Disneyland attractions. Our last cast album to be featured is Tarzan, which made its way to Broadway for a very short run. Phil Collins returns to write additional songs. Interestingly enough, Tarzan was Disney's last animated film to feature musical-type songs before it took a 10-year break until the return of Princess and the Frog. It's possible Phil Collins took these songs out of the movie at a time where musicals and animated films was winding down. Interesting trivia, for the workshop of this musical, Matthew Morrison played the adult Tarzan and Laura Bell Bundy played Jane. We're still on musicals, but this time movie musicals that Disney has made. And if you think that Mary Poppins is the only one that Disney has made, you're absolutely wrong. There's so much more. Disney has also made their own live-action versions of Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella, as well as Once Upon a Mattress by Mary Rodgers and Marshall Barer. And that's not all. There's a whole other list of older stuff that Disney has made, some of which have their own soundtracks, and some of them don't. But I'll leave you to explore that in the link provided in the podcast notes. I'm just going to highlight a few. Following the success of Mary Poppins, The Happiest Millionaire was the next film that Walt Disney did with the Sherman Brothers, but unfortunately it wound up a white elephant. There's also movie musicals like the one and only genuine original family band, Babes in Toyland, Darby O'Gill and the Little People, Bedknobs and Broomsticks, The Gnome Mobile, featuring the kids from the Mary Poppins movie, and not forgetting Pete's Dragon. Let's not forget the movie musical Enchanted, as well as Descendants, which follows the offsprings of our favorite Disney characters. And both of these have sequels that are planned for the future. And of course, we're all excited for the cast album of the first live-action remake of a classic Disney princess movie. Beauty and the Beast will feature 3 new songs. 2 have been announced so far. They are Forevermore and Days in the Sun. We're still on musicals, guys. These were specially made for the Disney cruise ships and their originals. Twice Charmed, which is a twist on the Cinderella story, has a cast album that only sells on the Disney Magic where it plays. And then there's Toy Story Musical, which I don't believe has a cast album available. And there's another new one based on the Tangled movie, or Rapunzel as it is known in Asia. There are 3 new songs written by Ellen Menken to add to this story. They're called Wanted Man, Flower of Gold, and When She Returns. We don't know as yet if there's going to be a cast recording, but you can find out more information as well as links to these songs on our Facebook podcast notes at www.facebook.com/onceuponafairytaletime. Go ahead and follow us as well while you're there. And to finally wrap up the musical segment, we have 3 more musicals to feature from the parks this time around. Aladdin, a musical spectacular which has closed, the Festival of the Lion King, as well as Finding Nemo. And I'm really happy to say that each of these have their own cast recordings. And while we're at the parks, let's look at some park albums. This is probably one of the harder ones to track down, so if you have any information, please feel free to contact me. Meanwhile, I'm going to highlight a few. A Musical History of Disneyland. It's probably the biggest release in Walt Disney Records history. It's a 6-disc 50th anniversary set. There's also Wishes, based on the 2004 Disney theme park fireworks show, and The Happiest Celebration on Earth, which has a retro theme to celebrate the 50th anniversary in 2005. Hopping along to the Disney on Ice albums, there are not many. The 2 that I found so far are 100 Years of Magic and 25th Anniversary. None of these tracks include the versions played in the shows, which actually has some wonderful arrangements, such as the version of Beauty and the Beast from the 100 Years of Magic show, and the version of My Own Home from the Jungle Book, which has a nice enchanting twist to it. You can watch a video of it on YouTube. It really sounds like Susan Egan. I asked her about it and she agreed, but said it wasn't her. It's no doubt by now that Disney music stretches far and wide. It also exists in covers performed by various artists. This list could go on and on and on. Send me some of your favorite covers. Meanwhile, I'll share some of mine. Lea Salonga and Susan Egan are my favorites. They perform many medleys as well as cut songs at their concerts and on their albums. Carrie Butler also released an album called Faith, Trust, and Pixie Dust, and that features songs like When You Wish Upon a Star, It's a Small World, God Help the Outcasts, Colors of the Wind, The Second Star to the Right, The Bare Necessities, When She Loved Me, as well as a cut song from Aladdin, Call Me a Princess. One of my absolute favorite covers is a version of A Whole New World on the album The Magic of Voices A Cappella Dreams. There are also non-Disney compilation albums that exist that have Disney songs, like Peter Pan, a musical adventure, which features Susan Egan singing I'm Flying. This album also features Jonathan Freeman. And then, of course, there's a whole slew of Disney compilation albums, like Disney Mania, which had albums 1 to 7, Now That's What I Call Disney, albums 1 to 3, and We Love Disney, which has 3 versions out now for different countries. Many famous pop singers are lending their voices to these compilations, which makes it all the more exciting. But I have to say, there are hits and misses. While we're here, I'd like to talk about another compilation album that got me really excited early on in my Disney pursuit. It's called The Music Behind the Magic, not to be confused with the 2006 2-disc set of the same name, which celebrates 50 years of Disney magic. This is a 4-disc box set highlighting the creative evolution behind the music of The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, and Aladdin, and this includes demos and cut songs, all really exciting stuff. The latest big release would be the Legacy Collection, which is a collection of 12 distinct anniversaries of 11 Disney films and the 60th anniversary of Disneyland. The next big one would be the Silly Symphony Collection, which restores all these 75 silly symphonies for your listening pleasure. Disney also offers many Christmas albums. Instead of talking about any of them in this episode, you can actually check out an episode of Disney Dust on my Disney Dwayne YouTube channel. Links are provided in the podcast notes. Here's a little more mouse history. Around 2005, Disney started to look into pushing the princesses collectively as a franchise. The first song ever to feature as many as 8 Disney princesses was called If You Can Dream. Most of the original singing voices of the princesses were recruited to sing this original song. The pop version sung by Ashley Gearing was also released and included in the finale of the Disney on Ice Princess Wishes show. Right about this time, 2 more albums with more original songs featuring the Disney princesses were released. The albums are The Princess Christmas and The Princess Tea Party. Following If You Can Dream, Disney continued the princess theme song tradition with a new release called The Glow. This song was also to promote Rapunzel being inducted into the princess lineup and was first sung by Shannon Saunders at Kensington Palace in London as part of that event. The Glow is not in the Tangled soundtrack, but can be found in the album Disney Princess Fairy Tale Songs. It was made popular again when Filipino singer Sarah Geronimo sung a new cover version with a music video featuring Merida, Anna, and Elsa. This sparked covers in different languages around the Asian region. Most of these videos can be found on the Disney Channel Asia's YouTube address. We're still on compilations. I'd like to highlight the And Friends series. The Princess and the Frog, Tiana and Friends includes new songs Dare to Dream by Snow White, sung by Melissa Disney, A Rose is a Rose by Aurora, sung by Leslie French, I'm Happy by Cinderella, sung by Tammy Tapan Damiano, and I See a Princess by Belle, sung by Susan Egan, and what is previously sung by Dr. John in the Princess and the Frog soundtrack for the song Down in New Orleans is now sung by Princess Tiana herself. There's also 101 Dalmatians and Friends, Cinderella and Friends, Lady and the Tramp and Friends, Little Mermaid and Friends, Sleeping Beauty and Friends, which includes The Art of Dressing Well, sung by Kelly Lynn. I'm not sure if there are any more, but it took quite a bit of sleuthing to put this list together. I had to use Google Image to see what albums popped up using keywords Disney and Friends. I also looked at the Customers Who Bought This Item Also Bought tab, and I looked up the discography of the singers who sang as these princesses to see what other albums were credited to their name. I even was desperate enough to randomly type titles of Disney movies, adding the words and Friends to them to see if any other albums popped up on the iTunes store. I continued to discover songs in Disney compilation albums that are standalone songs. For example, there are 2 songs in the Disney Asian album All for Love, which were composed and written by David Zappel and Ellen Menken. The rest of the 15 songs featured original singers from the various film soundtracks. These 2 songs are For Love of You and Story of My Life, sung by Filipino singers Jano Gibbs and Donna Cruz, respectively. We're almost to the end of this non-exhaustive list of the Disney Music Comprehensive Guide brought to you by Disney Dwayne and Once Upon a Fairy Tale, the podcast. Just a few more to cover. Some Disney instrumental albums I'd like to bring your attention to are Deconstructed, Disney Fairy Tale Weddings, and Disney Lullaby Album. The one I'd like to recommend is Mannheim Steamroller Meets the Mouse. It features some awesome natural sounds mixed in with original Disney tunes. And if you want to be the star of these Disney songs, there is the Disney Karaoke series, which features duets, Disney Karaoke's Volume 1 to 3, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, The Lion King, and Disney on Broadway, which features Broadway versions of songs from The Lion King, The Little Mermaid, Beauty and the Beast, Tarzan, and Mary Poppins. The recent Disney live adaptation of Into the Woods also has its own karaoke disc set. And last but not least, let's not forget Disney video games, some of which include Kingdom Hearts as well as Disney Infinity. Kingdom Hearts has original soundtracks that are available. For Disney Infinity, all tracks can be heard in-game using the boombox. I'm aware that I haven't covered foreign language albums, but you know what? This podcast ain't gonna end if I keep on going. I personally have a collection of foreign language Disney albums myself, and up to 10 versions of A Whole New World, which I will talk about in an upcoming episode of Disney Dust in the future. Meanwhile, if you're as hardcore a Disney fan as I am, especially about the music, please feel free to write to us at the Facebook page. Once again, it's at www.facebook.com/onceuponafairytaletime. Subscribe to me at YouTube, Disney Dwayne channel, as well as follow and write to me on Twitter at Disney Dwayne. Here's leaving you with a bit of trivia. Name 4 singers that have sung as the voice of Aurora. You can either pause the podcast and try to answer that, or just continue as I give you the answers. Mary Costa is the original 1959 Sleeping Beauty. Grey Griffin sang as Aurora in the 2004 release of If You Can Dream, featuring the 8 Disney princesses. Cassidy Ladden in Disney Princess Enchanted Tales, Follow Your Dreams, a direct-TV film, sang as Sleeping Beauty. And then Leslie French in the Disney compilation albums featuring new princess songs. And there you have it. That's another Once Upon a Fairy Tale podcast episode for you. Be sure to follow us on SoundCloud as well as iTunes, and tell your friends about us. Until the next episode, this is Disney Dwayne. Have a great one.